Our scripture for this morning is from Psalm chapter 146. Praise the Lord, O my soul. I'll give praise to the Lord all my life. I'll sing praise to my God as long as I live. Do not put your trust in princes, in mortal men who cannot save. When their spirit departs, they return to the ground, and on that very day their plans come to nothing. Blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God, the maker of heaven and earth. The sea and everything in them, the Lord who remains faithful forever. He upholds the cause of the oppressed, gives food to the hungry. The Lord sets prisoners free, gives sight to the blind. The Lord lifts up those who are bowed down. The Lord loves the righteous. The Lord watches over the foreigner and sustains the fatherless and the widow, but he frustrates the ways of the wicked. The Lord reigns forever, your God, O Zion, for all nations. Praise the Lord. Ten years ago today, I lived in Canada. I know, that's a really far, long ways away from Liberia, and how do I get there? But that's part of how I got to Liberia. You see, somehow 11 years ago, God put on my heart inner city work. And 10 years ago and 3 months ago, I felt God say, you need to go live in Winnipeg. I've told you a little bit about this story before, about how when I got there, there was a murder outside my window. I'm 18 years old and going, okay, God, why am I here? But I learned a lot about those who are refugees during that time. And so when I moved to Sioux Falls, I worked for a church, and at the time it was just a Hispanic church and an English church. And my job was to work with children, to be the children's minister. But we had a gentleman named Samuel come to our church and say, we just got kicked out of the building we were worshiping in. We just need a building for our church. Samuel's from Liberia, and so Vince and I went down to, appropriately, Guadalajara for Mexican food, and listened to Samuel and his story. Samuel is a refugee from Liberia. He lives in Sioux Falls, and he's lived here since 2007. At this point, I didn't know anything about Liberia. Where is Liberia? I knew it was in Africa, but that didn't help me. Where is it? Well, if you imagine Africa like this, right? There's a lump here and it comes down. Liberia is in the corner here. It's on the Atlantic Ocean side. But that didn't help me, so why is he a refugee? Is he Muslim? Is he part of a warring tribe? What happened? So he told me his story about how a political party wanted power. This man wanted power, and one day, he and all of his followers came in to the country, which is about half the size of South Dakota in land area, and just started shooting people. Anybody and everybody. And his family, which has 9 children, and his parents, his dad was 104 at the time, had to scatter. Some went to the Ivory Coast, some went to Guinea, some went to Sierra Leone, and they had no idea at that point if they would see one another. They just left. And when Samuel was living in the refugee camp there, with no contact of his family, there outbroke in that country a civil war. And so the U.S. said, since you are in a refugee camp in a place that's not your own, and you pass all the screenings, we're going to bring you to the U.S. as a place that's safe. Now, Samuel has been a Christian his entire life. This was not because of Muslim versus Christian. This was not because he speaks Quran and some people are Baso. It's because people wanted power. And so seriously just came in and started shooting machine guns. Samuel's father, who was 104 at the time, hid underneath his bed until they came and found him, because he couldn't walk. And so Vince and I are sitting there listening to the story and going, okay, so now what? He said, I have this group of people who've been brought to Sioux Falls. We're all separated from our family. We have no idea if our family's alive or dead, but we just need a place to worship. And so at Crosspoint, we allowed them to join us in worship, and then as the children's director, I worked with them and all the other kids doing Sunday school. So before I moved here, by a year before I moved here, which now has been I've been here 2 3/4 years, so it's been about 4 years. Samuel approached me and said, Steph, I know you have a heart for other people, for people that are in need. I have this vision. I've now reconnected with my family who are all back in Liberia. We found each other. My brothers and sisters are all alive. They've lost loved ones. Victoria has no more husband, and all she wants to do is take care of the kids who don't have parents anymore. Would you help me create this nonprofit orphanage so we can help care for kids that have no parents? I don't know anything about running an orphanage. I don't know anything about starting a 501c3 nonprofit. I have no idea the lawyer language that needs to be used, but okay. And then we moved here, an hour away, and I went, okay, now what? How do I still get to be part of this? And I didn't know. Most of you, I didn't talk about this very much until 6 months ago. Most of you had no idea I was sitting on the board of directors for an orphanage in a country that most of us confuse with Libya. They're not the same. Libya is on the north side by the Mediterranean Sea. Liberia is almost on the south side of the hump. Not the same. And it's a Christian country. So I want to tell you a little bit about my trip, because Samuel came to me a year and a half ago and he said, I want to take this trip. I want to go see and experience what we're doing and be able to tell people about this. And so we began, again, with 501c3 in 2011 as Liberian refugees, and we have 32 kids in the building that we have. It took us 3 years to build the building. The 32 kids were just living on the street. But the problem is we have hundreds on the waiting list. Just in the small village that I went to that is about Parkson size, the name is Giobli, there are 57 orphans on the waiting list. And there are hundreds more villages just like it. So this is the orphanage with all the kids, and all of the adults you see there are volunteer staff. They care for these kids 24 hours a day, and they're paid $0. They feed them, they clothe them, what else do you do to kids? You bandage their wounds, because just like our kids, they trip and fall and scrape their knee. They play with things like knives that they shouldn't, or not in the right way, and accidents happen, right? Accidents happen. 2-year-olds are learning how to walk and potty train, and these people are just, with all of their free time, or not so much free time, are donating that to the orphanage. And most of them are Samuel's family. The laser. This is a brother, this is a brother, this is a sister, this is a brother. This is a brother. Samuel's family is doing this out of all their free time and money. So what do? We went and visited, and the kids were really, really, really excited. And we were sent clothes. This is a picture of all the kids in their brand new clothes. They're all very excited. And Pastor Samuel's in that picture, but I'm not in that picture because we didn't have clothes for Fatu and Madeline, the right size. So I took them shopping. And it was the first time in their life somebody had picked out clothes just for them, in their size, in a market, that were brand new. They were clean clothes. They were so excited. And I somehow did not remember to take a picture of them in their new clothes. But those are all the kids minus Madeline and Fatu. And they're standing in front of this. This is the hope for the new school. In Liberia, people don't go to school for free. They pay to go to school. And so it's really hard to send 32 kids that you barely feed to school. And so what we're doing is we're building the school. And the hope is that it will be open to the community, and it will also be an income to feed our kids, but it also means that the kids in the community that may not eat lunch will get food. Thank you, Dave. This is the water that they were drinking. It's just a little pond. It's downflow from the neighbors that do their laundry and their dirty dishes and take their bath. So all of that water flows into here, and this 2 years ago was what our kids were drinking. But thankfully, a church in Sioux Falls that is partnering with Pastor Samuel, they've purchased the water. Or purchased, not just water, but they purchased a hand pump, which actually allows for the whole community in that area to have a hand pump. Now, I told you when I came home the very few things I missed were flushing toilets. They do have stools like we do, but they have to haul their water in from the well, which thankfully at the orphanage is just a stone's throw away. It's not very far, but you haul your water in and you flush it with a bucket. This is the training toilet, though. Because as most of you who are parents know, or aunts and uncles, or kids yourself, you know that at some point you have to learn how to use the toilet. And learning how, when your 6 months isn't quite as working, but then you don't have diapers, so you hold the child over the toilet. So it's just one that you learn how to squat and go that. So this is our training toilet that the kids have over the septic system that runs from the inside. Most of the kids use this during the day. Somebody missed. It happens. So what's different? I told you a little bit about the food when the kids asked. The food is different. School's not free. The roads aren't managed. There is one paved highway throughout the entire country, and once you get off of that, it's all dirt road. But on the way out to Diobli, the last grader that came through was in 2008. Now, many of you I know live on a dirt road or have relatives who live on a dirt road. Can you imagine driving every day on a road that hasn't been graded since 2008? It's pretty entertaining. This is fufu. I mentioned it's the consistency of potatoes and boogers. So you take it and you pinch off a loaf and then you dip it in the soup and you swallow it. Don't chew it. It doesn't work well. Everybody wears a school uniform. So not only do you have to afford to go to school, you have to afford to have a school uniform. These are the kids' group. This is the good part of the road. This is a good part. And this is where we had to get out and walk for fear of actually getting in trouble and falling over. So the other thing that's very different is that seatbelts are not required, and you try to shove as many people into a vehicle as possible. I mentioned that we drove out to the bush in a Toyota Tundra. Many of you know what they look like. It was the 4-door Toyota Tundra, had the suicide doors. So, in the front was Hilton, the driver, and my security guard, myself. In the back were 4 people, including Pastor Samuel. In the bed of the truck were 16 people, 3 goats, 5 chickens, and 9 bags of plantains, and all of our luggage. And that's how we drove all the way up to the bush. Now, the bush that we went to is probably like going to Watertown from here. It's not extremely far, but it took us 12 hours to get there. Because you can't go more than 15 to 25 miles an hour on a road like this. And then you get stuck, and you have to get out in the bush. I think there's a picture somewhere in here of how covered in mud we were. But the difference is, it's not just a little mud. The mud might come up to your thighs, and you have to drive through it. And the problem is, this is the only road. This is the only thing they have. I told you the other thing I didn't like and missed was small bugs. This is the one on my pillow. It's the size of a bread plate. Not to be confused with the leopard spider, which is the size of a dinner plate. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. These ones eat birds. Also, a thing that was different is the signage. This is just driving down the road. This is a billboard. And in order to prevent diarrhea, you must bury all your poo-poo. Nobody tells them this. This is how they find out things. The thing I was so amazed at, the thing that just I didn't understand, was the lack of education. It isn't just that they can't add 2 plus 2. It's things like, oh, you should bury poo-poo. Or, did you know that you have goats that you eat, but you don't know that you can milk goats? Nobody told them they could milk a goat. Our education system is so vitally important, and the same is true for other people. Education is so important, and it's just common sense things. Now, I wish I had many, many, many of you with me along the trip, because I don't know anything about milking goats. I also don't know anything about breeding goats or raising chickens. I know nothing about cultivating land for rice, although I don't think many of us do here. It's a little different crop. But I wanted your knowledge. I wanted you to come with me, because there were so many things. I don't know how to can, or I'm learning how to can, but I don't necessarily know how to can and preserve food the way that it used to happen. I don't know how to store food without electricity, but I know many of you do. And that is something that they don't know. Also signs about Ebola everywhere. But while I was there, it was Ebola free. Till about 12 hours. But just in case you're wondering, there's a 21-day incubation period, right, Dr. Vanderpool? And I am long past 21 days. So, she cleared me. So what did we do? We brought clothing. Each of the kids got new outfits. We brought mosquito nets, thanks to a church in North Dakota. We bought a generator. It was the coolest thing to be there when for the first time there was electricity in the orphanage. When for the first time they could get ready for bed and not be running into one another in the dark. Because we know how it gets much darker here, but for them it's 12 hours. The sun comes up at 6 a.m. and it goes down at 6 p.m. every day. They're right on the equator, 6 to 6. It doesn't change. And so most of us eat at 6 o'clock. They have to have everything done before 6 o'clock if they want light. And so this will change a lot of things, because 32 kids ready for bed, as many of you who know who have 2 or more, is not the easiest thing in the world. They don't always want to go to bed. The third thing was attention. These kids just wanted attention, and then we also planned the top 6 priorities. Top 6 priorities are making sure the kids have food, creating a slush fund for medication, because if you don't have the money before you go to the hospital, the doctors just turn you away. If you are having a heart attack and you don't have the money to give them before you get there, too bad. And so one of the things we want to do is create a slush fund so that when something happens to any of our kids, because we know that kids are kids and they break arms and they break legs and they do things. We want to create that. We want to finish the school. We want to build a wall for security. We want to figure out a way to transport our kids. And then also to make sure that the staff can feed their families as well. Ruth, who is the main person, she's wonderful. She has 4 kids herself. Yet she does not work because she spends all her time at the orphanage. And so we want to make sure that her family can be taken care of as well. Another thing I talked to you about, and I thank you as a church for donating. We helped provide food for clergy who came. They don't have seminary. And so pastors just learn how to do things and they never learn from others. And so we're creating this group called Help for Needy African Pastors. They have their English isn't quite where ours is. That's probably not what I would name a group, but that's what they named a group. And so we created this conference where they would come and they'd get 3 days of education. And we did this 3 different times in 3 different places. And as you can see, there are a lot of pastors who really want to learn. And so this is in the capital city. This is in the capital city that all of a sudden the name is gone. This is in Gonta at one of the churches. The church, in order to capitalize on the little breeze there is made out of palm branches woven on the sides. And this is in Diobli. And so there are plenty of pastors who are just really excited to learn and hear. And then I learned a little bit about African dancing. And so African dancing is a lot like this. And then when the women get really excited, especially the elders, most of these women are 60, 70, or 80 years old. They then all together get in a circle and they dance like this, around in circles while singing. I think we should just do church like that, right? Everybody up, dancing, moving in a circle. It's a little bit different. One of the big differences is hospitality. They don't have a whole lot, but like I said, they gave clothes. That's me in the one dress. Goats. I don't know anything about killing a goat. I learned how to do that too. And then they wake you up at any time when there's somebody new to greet. So I was still sleeping and they decided to introduce me to Samuel's oldest sister, Catherine. And so they wake you up just like that, and then they give you chickens. So be ready the hospitality as you get up and they give you things. To honor people, they pin these sashes on them, and then the people, as an offering, bring up money and they pin them to the sash. And so this was an honoring of pastors at a new church at a celebration they were having. More chickens. I ended up with 8 chickens and 5 goats. And this is Pastor Samuel, who is from Sioux Falls. He's the one I traveled with. And at that point, he's probably asking me, do we need a visa for this goat? How are we going to get this goat home? I said, no, we don't need a visa for this goat. I know people with goats in the U.S. We'll get goats there. Coconuts, rice, soap, and fish. These people have a heart that even when they can't afford things, they bring what they have. And we, in return, fed them the food that we cooked with them. So, this is at the orphanage. I was teaching them how to eat a dum-dum. They'd never had a sucker, and so I brought a 5-pound bag of dum-dums, and we were eating dum-dums. This is Sunday school. These are just, now I'm just at pictures that I wanted to show you. Lizards everywhere. Nobody asked me about animals. None of the kids asked me about animals. I thought there were lizards everywhere, and spiders, and chickens, and goats. And I saw one monkey, but it was a pet, and I did not see anything else. And they told me that there was a boa constrictor, but I don't believe them. So, they were teaching me how to dance, so I taught them the chicken dance. They asked me what to teach, or how to teach them how we dance. I did not think whipping and neighing was appropriate, so I taught them the chicken dance. That was your suggestion, right? Yeah? No, chicken dance. Part of the war was that the way they oppressed people was they ripped out all of the electricity, all of the water, and they destroyed all the gas stations. And so here you can see in the back, here, they have large gallons that they get, 5-gallon containers they get every morning. And so they know that these mayonnaise jars are 1 gallon. And so you go up and you purchase gas by the gallon. And then they pour it into your car by the gallon with the funnel. This is still part of the war that they haven't fixed. But what do you fix first? The gas station, the road, the education, the food. The fact that there is a 60% unemployment rate, but that's because there are no jobs. There is no money to pay people to work. And so he's very excited because he has a job and he's pouring gas. I mentioned that we were touching the Atlantic Ocean. We snuck onto a beach, and by quite literally I mean snuck and ran away from the security guard that was guarding the beach. This is Marvin. He really wanted to come home with us. And this is leaving. You never know where your shirts are going to end up. I ran into this man in the bush. And I asked him, I said, how do you get this shirt? And he said, well, I bought it at a store. Okay. Well, being from North Dakota, I was very, very excited. And so I had to take a picture with him, especially after yesterday. Sorry, Jackrabbit fans. But the truth is, you never know where your clothing is going to end up and how important that a simple t-shirt that you might think is garbage, especially if you're a Jackrabbit fan, right? You never know where a t-shirt might end up. This was way out in the bush. And in this village, these people had come up and said, there's this boy who has no clothes. And I was like, well, I can spend 50 cents on a shirt, right? I can spend 50 cents. Most of us have 50 cents that we can give away. I can spend 50 cents on a shirt. And they said, well, where are you going to get it? I don't know. I said, there's nowhere besides where you just came from, which is 12 hours away, through all that mud and through all that road. There's no place to get a t-shirt. As I've been reflecting on this, about my trip, there's 2 things that came. The first is from James, and we spent 8 weeks on the book of James. But it's from James chapter 1. Religion that our God and Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. And then I was looking through the Psalms and through David, and these are the words that David wrote. And he's writing it as a prayer to God. How long will you defend the unjust and so show partiality to the wicked? Defend the cause of the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the rights of the poor and oppressed. Rescue the weak and needy, and deliver them from the hand of the wicked. And so I really want to thank you as a church for allowing me to go, for asking me about this, for supporting me financially, and through the Band-Aids and things like that. This is a place that, even in the midst of all this political things happening in our world where we say immigrants are horrible, people of other color are horrible, and other nationalities, and we don't want them. But sometimes they're just taken advantage of. We see them and we think, oh, they're lazy. But they're some of the hardest working people that we know, or I know. And so I thank you for your support and the ability to go. And if you have more questions, I'd love to answer them, but I also want to honor your time. And so feel free to ask them. I have 5,000 pictures. So, and if you want to see more pictures, I have 5,000 of them. And so you can see them, but this is the basics of it. And so thank you for your support. I want to end this morning with a hymn.